There is currently a massive divide in the Halloween fandom when it comes to the merits of Rob Zombie's Halloween. Some people love it, some people hate it, but I can guarantee you, just as the title of this video suggests, most people don't really understand it. And that is the goal of today's uh, lecture, video, essay, whatever the hell you want to call it. I do want to explain the movie in a way that everybody can understand. And I want to reassure you that I am not trying to convince you to like this movie. If it's not your thing, it's not your thing, and that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. But to say that the movie is straight up garbage and the dialogue sucks and all of this shit was unnecessary, I assure you that that is objectively wrong. And I'm going to explain why. First, I want to discuss the biases that people have. From what I can tell, they largely stem from a Q&A session featuring John Carpenter when a young woman had asked him about remakes and Rob Zombie's Halloween specifically.
Ask me about Rob Zombie's.
Yeah.
Well, I would say nice things about him, but you know, we did this. I thought it was going to be a real cool deal for the History Channel, the Biography Channel, whatever that is. They were going to do about Halloween. I thought, ooh, that's pretty cool. Until I noticed that they did one on Caddyshack. And I thought, wow, what is this? Anyway, they interviewed him on that biography and channel, and he lied about me. He said I was very cold to him when he told me I was going to, and that he was going to make it. Nothing could be further from the truth. I said, make it your own movie, man. You know, this is yours now. Don't worry about me. I was incredibly supportive. Why that piece of shit lied, I don't know. He had no reason to. Why did he do it? So, frankly, that will color my response to the film. If I take that away, I did not. I thought that he took away the mystique of the story by explaining too much about the guy. I don't care about that. It's supposed to be a force of nature. He's supposed to be almost supernatural. Knowing about that and he was too big.
Yeah.
He wasn't.
Now, Carpenter asks why Rob Zombie would say these things about him, and my response is, what if he didn't? I do believe that this is a miscommunication between the two, because this is what the clip from that biography episode from their show Inside Story, this is what Rob Zombie had to say.
Zombie himself encountered a somewhat chilly reaction from Carpenter.
You know, I called him up, and the conversation pretty much went exactly like this. I was like, hey, John, it's Rob. Hey, just want to tell you I'm doing a remake of Halloween. And then there's like a weird silence that goes, so what do you want me to say? You know, I don't want you to say anything. I just wanted to tell you. He goes, okay, have fun with it. Okay.
And you can see that the word chilling was not uttered by Rob Zombie. He never called him cold. That was the narrator of the episode saying that Carpenter's response was chilling. Now, I'm not going to lie. I am absolutely a John Carpenter fanboy. But at the same time, I'm not going to defend him to the death if I know that he's in the wrong. You know, a lot of the stuff that he had said in that Q&A about, you know, Michael's mystique being ruined and he was too big and all this other stuff. When it comes to the mystique portion of this statement, John Carpenter himself ruined that. He did that when he created Halloween 2. Now, I'm not upset with that. Not only did I actually like the movie, but because he did that, he was able to make a few more movies, including The Fog. And Halloween, the original Halloween, and The Fog are in my top 10 favorite movies of all time. And quite frankly, Rob Zombie's depiction of John Carpenter might have been spot on. And the narrator might have been, you know, correct in saying that it was a chilling response. Because when you listen to Carpenter talk about remakes and sequels and stuff like that, he is rather cold and uncaring.
To be remade, to have a movie of mine remade is very flattering. And some of these remakes I get to collect a check, which is even nicer.
He says he's very supportive, but even in his own words of, oh man, don't worry about me, like fucking Rob Zombie had already said, he doesn't care what anybody thinks. But he knows John Carpenter is a legend. He grew up loving Carpenter's films just like most of us did. And he wanted to show his respect, but he didn't necessarily want his input, and nobody should. Like he is going to set out to make his own film anyway. Like Carpenter didn't have to tell him to do that. Unfortunately, it seems that the fandom has taken this Q&A interview to heart and has affected their ability to view Rob Zombie's Halloween objectively. Not to mention, the biases that they would have, having viewed the original run in its entirety. You hear him say things like, they ruin the mystique of Michael Myers. And, well, the Thorn trilogy also does that. Halloween H2O and Resurrection are all based on Halloween 2, which is a sequel to Halloween 1, but with all the revelations of Laurie being Michael's sister and all that mystique is also ruined. Michael now has a motivation. He's not just some evil incarnate storm that blew through town one day. He has a motivation. And I know they tried to renege that with Halloween 2018, that Blumhouse trilogy. They tried to get back to that, storm. But as far as ruining the mystique of Michael Myers, Carpenter had already done that. The Thorn trilogy had done that. And again, H2O and Resurrection are all based on Halloween 2. So that mystique only exists in the first film. And as far as Michael being too big, well, there's a reason for that. And we're going to get into that in this next segment when we discuss the movie proper. The whole thing about Michael Myers in this story is that he is the main character. Alright, and again, we will go over that stuff when we break down the film, and I'll show you, how that was done. But it was just a theory until I saw this inside story on Halloween where Rob Zombie says as much himself.
Zombie's challenge in 2007 was to find a new place to take the franchise. His destination? Inside the mind of the previously unknowable Michael Myers.
Why don't we just make the whole movie about him? The whole movie, he's our lead character, he's not a secondary character. And that was really the approach I took.
So how do you make a violent psychopath, in this case a legendary one, how do you make him likable enough that you will get behind him? That you understand the journey that he's going on, and you understand his motivations, and while you don't support his methods, you're like, okay, like he's got a goal. And some of the shit he does in the movie, you kind of turn a blind eye to, and that is achieved by making the world around Michael awful. Some of the things that people didn't like in the movie is that, like, Michael lives in this, white trash household where his stepdad is just an awful human being. His sister doesn't care about him, apparently. I mean, she was just basically a douchebag teenager, and that is just a phase that people go through. But to Michael, this is an affront, And when he gets to school, and his bullies are just awful to him. Like, everybody is awful to Michael, except for his doctor, his mom, and his baby sister. And he doesn't really care too much for Loomis, not like he does, his mom and baby sister, but like I would say he's definitely on the list of people he kind of cares about, right? But other than that, the world around him is awful, and you can see him being sociologically conditioned to hate these people, and to an extent, we might hate them a little bit too, and that's kind of the whole point. Like, you don't agree with Michael's methods, but when he offs some of these people, you don't seem to care too much. you know? And this also comes down to, well, there's a scene in the movie where um, Michael escapes. And there was a big debate where some dude asserted that I am in favor of SA because I defended this scene. And I defended this scene because I think it's better storytelling. Right? The theatrical cut of Rob Zombie's Halloween has Michael escaping in transport, where he literally hulks out of his shackles and kills like 4 or 5 armed guards and a lot of the staff on his way out the door, you know. Now, is that serviceable? Kind of. I can understand why they don't show the SA scene in theaters, but in the unrated cut of it, we see this orderly who had been bullying Michael earlier in the film. We see him and his cousin take this young woman from her cell in the hospital, and they go into Michael's room. Now, they reassure us that Michael is a psychopath. He has no empathy. You know, like that's pretty much the crux of what psychopathy is, and sociopathy, is that they have no empathy. And so Michael is sitting at his desk making like his 300 paper mache mask whenever they break in and start to hurt this woman. And he cannot be moved at all. You know, he continues making his mask while they're doing this. And it's not until they reach up and grab his masks off of his wall and start wearing them, that's when he gets upset. And he kills the cousin who's hurting the woman and pushes the orderly out into the hallway where he 86s him. Now, that vile scene makes us hate the orderly and his cousin. And in that moment, you might find yourself cheering Michael on as he inadvertently saved that woman. And I'm going to say he inadvertently saved her because we don't see what Michael does to her, if he does anything. Because as the movie goes on, Danny Trejo's character, we're getting to spoiler territory here, so forgive me. Danny Trejo's character is an orderly that has been taking care of Michael for the past 15 years. You know, and we even see him at 2 different points when Michael is both a child and an adult. But as Michael is trying to leave the hospital, he has his goal. He wants to get home. That is the whole crux of the movie, is that Michael wants to go home. We see it when he's a boy in the hospital. He doesn't understand why he has to stay there. And that is probably another mental issue that he has, is he has split his identity into Michael Myers without the mask. And he's just a normal kid versus this other rage-filled part of him that he knows is destructive, and he calls it his ugliness, and he hides it behind the mask. That gives him, you know, freedom to let that part of him out, you know. And so, sorry, I went off on a tangent there, but suffice it to say, Michael will cut down anybody who gets in his way, including Danny Trejo's character, who was nothing but nice to him. Being nice doesn't matter to him. He just wants what he wants. And it shows us that, you know, yes, while he did inadvertently save that woman was not in his way, so I choose to believe he didn't hurt her. But Danny Trejo's character stood between him and the exit to the hospital, and therefore, you know, stood in the way of him getting to his sister. So he kills Trejo's character. And when Michael gets his jumpsuit, or I call it a jumpsuit, it's coveralls. When Michael gets his coveralls, he kills somebody for it because, you know, he needs clothes. And again, he doesn't care. This person is standing in his way, and he's going to cut them down. When he gets back to Haddonfield, you know, like, he sees that Lori has friends. Well, that's not going to work for him, you know, because he wants Lori all to himself. He wants his family back. So this affection that she has for these people, he's going to cut those out as well. And the tragedy of this film is that when he finally meets up with his sister, when he finally, gets to, in his own way, communicate with her, he shows her a picture of them together as children. Obviously, she was just a baby. She doesn't remember any of this. And so his pleas, like, they're for nothing, and Laurie attacks him and escapes, and Loomis catches up to him, shoots him a couple of times. Michael is down for a second, but when he recuperates himself at this time, Loomis had put his revolver in his trench coat pocket and tried to warm Laurie up, this is in the middle or the end of October, by putting that trench coat over her. And when Michael recuperates, she takes off running wearing this thing, and all of this culminates at a standoff, in one of the rooms of the Myers house, where Michael is standing in the doorway and Laurie has Loomis's revolver, and she takes aim at him, but Michael knocks them both out of the window of that second story. And whenever they land, again, you can see how much Michael cares about her, because he turned and made sure he hit the ground with Laurie landing on top of him. And again, she doesn't understand any of this, and she picks up the revolver, which I'm assuming has spun in the fall. The cylinder has spun in whenever they fell, because she straddles on top of him, puts the gun point blank in his face, and pulls the trigger twice, and nothing happens. And at this point, Michael reaches up and grabs the barrel of the gun, and the camera cuts back and forth, right? And at no time do you see Michael try to take the gun from her. And it really makes it look like he is studying that weapon. He's given up. And when she pulls the trigger again, it finally goes off. And blood just erupts into her face. And the screaming is enough to drive anyone insane. Scout Taylor Compton did a great job, especially in that moment, just showing the trauma that is now passed on to her. And so I do believe this is a great film that does show the journey of Michael Myers, as he just, he is a person who is very sick, very violent, but he just wants to go home. And elevating all the nasty shit that's going on in his life to an 11 gets you behind him. It makes you want for him to somehow reach his goal. We don't agree with how he does it, but we understand. And that is enough to help us follow him. There are moments in the movie, like I said, with Danny Trejo, Laurie's parents. He offs all of these people not because he's some violent psychopath randomly going on the attack. That's what happened in the original film. This time he has a motivation. And so he cuts down anybody who's standing in his way. That includes Danny Trejo. That includes her friend, Laurie's friends, and her parents. It's all very tragic. And in the end, he doesn't reach his goal because he's rejected. And once he's rejected, he decides that it is best to have Laurie ultimately reject him with that gunshot. And then that's the end. And that's what I choose to be the end, because much like Carpenter, Rob Zombie didn't want to make his sequel to Halloween. He did demand that the studio not interfere as much, and boy, does it show. He went full tilt Rob Zombie in that film, but that's neither here nor there. I hope this movie, this video makes sense, and I hope you enjoyed it. And maybe I'll have more breakdowns for you in the future, I hope. But until then, I appreciate you guys watching and mostly listening, and we'll see you guys in the next one.